Good morning. It is 9:58 a.m. on Wednesday, May 22nd, 2019. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. So, last night, as part of a thing they call Ghibli Fest, what that is they bring a lot of Studio Ghibli movies to the theaters as part of like Fathom events, these special showings. So it's an opportunity to see some of those movies on the big screen, even though they've been out for a long time. And in particular, a lot of Studio Ghibli movies are done by a man named Hayao Miyazaki, who, in my personal opinion, is one of the greatest animated storytellers ever, and has made a number of really wonderful, wonderful movies. But the one that I saw last night is one of my favorites, even of his, and that is Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. It's interesting when I see it spelled, I just say Nausicaa, but it's in the Japanese, they definitely are saying Nausicaa. I actually have an art book for the movie, and it's clear that the anglicized spelling of the name is, they had a lot of variations of that spelling, but it's also actually a name that comes from Greek mythology. So what are you going to do? It's been a while since I watched the dubbed version, but I think they do say Nausicaa in the dubbed version. I may be mistaken. Anyway, it was the subtitled version that I watched last night, although both are good. So why is this one of my favorites? Well, it's one of the first animated features done by Hayao Miyazaki, and so some of his things that became kind of like his trademark style are not necessarily fully developed there yet. And in some respects, it feels much more epic than a lot of his other movies, less intimate as a result, although it has a lot of really intimate moments. And it also has some characters that are pretty clear bad guys, although even they are just framed as short-sighted, I suppose, and willing to do bad things to achieve what for them is a good result. And given a lot of the national attention, I guess international, on, for example, Daenerys from Game of Thrones, I think it's interesting to have some of those issues also be in this movie. It's the 35th anniversary of this movie, though. Like, none of these ideas are brand new, but let me set the scene if you've not heard of the movie at all. We have what seems to be a very far future society in what is sometimes called post-apocalyptic, meaning it's clear there was once a much more advanced civilization, but it was all destroyed in what is called the 7 Days of Fire. And what we see is images of these enormous, towering over the skyscrapers, giant warriors that were used to destroy everything, basically. And now we find ourselves in this humble little village that has some elements of advanced technology in terms of like gliders and things. But we also see that there are many ruins in the world that have been taken over by a new fungus-based ecosystem where all these giant insects live. And it's very beautiful in kind of an alien way, but we learn very quickly that the insects, generally speaking, are hostile to humans, although that's conditional, as we'll talk about in a minute. But also, they give off spores and toxic gases that are toxic for humans and would kill you in minutes. And so we have our heroine who is exploring one of these jungles, trying to learn more about it, but also some of these giant insects leave behind shells and molted skins and various things that make for very useful materials. And so she's scavenging, and so that's but then this girl's peaceful little valley gets drawn into a much larger conflict, and that ends up drawing the anger of the insects as well. And it's all kind of a mystery, but the central conflict and premise and theme for our main character is that wanting to know about and understand the insects and the fungus and this, what they call the Sea of Decay, but also just seeing the horror and pointlessness of the war that the rest of the humans seem intent on fighting. That, for example, the two major nations that are fighting in this war that her valley gets drawn into, what's made clear is that they actually both want to do the same thing. They just don't trust the other one to stop at doing it. So it's like, well, we both want to resurrect one of these giant warriors to burn away the Sea of Decay, but if they get it first, they won't stop there. They'll destroy us too. And then the other side is saying the same thing. And Nausicaa is over here saying, how about you just neither of you do any of that? Because what she learns in the course of the movie is that this ecosystem and the insects are actually performing a purifying function of the planet after the pollution left behind by the Great War. And so for these other nations to try to resurrect one of these giant warriors to destroy the insects is not only counterproductive because it just attracts the ire of the insects, who are much more powerful than the humans. Okay, you know what? I'm getting bogged down in the plot, and that's not really what I think is what's so meaningful to me in this movie. I think the thing that means so much to me in this movie, I talked a little bit about on Twitter yesterday, and that's just that the main character, Nausicaa herself, is just so wonderful. She's young. She's very capable and adventurous and smart and curious and all of those things. But she also has had a lot of responsibilities put on her. She's the daughter of the leader of this village, but he's been confined to bed from illness for a long time. And so she has a lot of responsibilities, but you know, she loves her people and wants to take care of them, and they love her back, and it's this nice thing. But then as they get drawn into this war, it's very obvious they don't have the strength to resist without terrifying loss of life. And so there's a little bit of a, you know, you could almost give into despair, and she almost does, but she continues to fight by not fighting. And I know that sounds a little confusing, but over and over again, the lesson is she puts herself in danger to try to get people to stop fighting. And I don't know, it's hard to explain. I would say that in some respects, compared to a lot of animated movies today, the plot is pretty complicated, and I think the second half of it does get a little slow in terms of its pacing by, sort of modern standards. But just the stakes and the lengths that Nausicaa is willing to go to protect her people, and by extension all people, and yet also the world, it's just an amazing journey, and I'm inspired every time I watch it. And so last night was my first opportunity to see it on the big screen, and I'm very happy I did. So I'll go ahead and leave it there, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow for 5 more minutes, and when I do, I will be finished packing up for Balticon, which is this weekend, and I'm very excited. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and I'll talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes, just as someone was joining. Welcome. Goodbye.